members of the press, you've heard ministers of the government. Certainly we would now welcome your questions.
Madam Premier, how much of what is contained in the throne speech forms part of the government's election platform?
The party's platform is separate from the government legislative agenda. And certainly, as you would have heard today, we tabled a number of bills, both the referendum bill, both the issues with regard to customs duty, certainly the Supreme Court Act. So what we have to do as a government is that continue to operate and make sure that the country is protected. Our party's political platform will come out at the appropriate time once the writ has been dropped, and they're separate.
There are things like conscription and the issue of the tractor trailers, which have been long-standing and hadn't been addressed frequently or addressed in depth before the announcement before your announcement that the election is going to be called before the end of the year, and then we see them cropping up again in the throne speech. So
no, what you not at all, not at all. You see, we've been in recess. The House this is the opening of the new legislative agenda. The House has been in recess from about July, and certainly you wouldn't have heard about legislative initiatives to any appreciable degree during that recess. The government's been busy from when we were elected and busy of the last throne speech. And what you've heard, in fact, at each time we've produced a document, whether it was throne speech 2011 or budget 2012, people always said it was a pre-election throne speech or pre-budget, pre-election budget speech. The government is working and is working for the people. And we will continue at every option to document, table, and promote policies that are going to assist the country. And I think you would be forgiven for thinking that it is electioneering because of the type of substance it contains. But what we're doing is working and we're listening to the people. And that's what's reflected in our throne speech. That's what will be reflected in our platform. That's what will be reflected in our budget in 2013. Listening to the people.
How much of what is contained in here is even going to be debated, let alone implemented, given the fact that the election, as you mentioned, the election is going to be announced soon. Then we have the Christmas break coming up for Parliament. How soon can we expect any of this to be even, as I mentioned, debated?
If you're asking me, are we sincere about the proposals that we have articulated in the throne speech, then the answer to that is a categoric yes. If you're asking me, did we table legislation, and is there legislation that is ready to be tabled, whether on dumpster trailers, in addition to those that have been already documented? Clearly, yes. If you're asking me now, when is the election going to be called, you will get that information in due course.
Is it your intention, Premier, to actually fulfill this legislative agenda before you call the election?
It is my intention to have an election called at the appropriate time.
Yes, Premier, in your going ahead as Finance Minister of Pakistan, you've indicated here on page 2 that the fiscal strategy is to restore a positive primary balance on its main operating account. Is there a time frame for that? Is that time frame 2 years, 3 years, 5 years?
It's, Mr. Bercho, as we stated in, I think, December 16th or December 18th last year with the tabling of the pre-budget report. We set out a platform for action, and we said that it's going to be a multi-year, multi-pronged platform for action, and that ministers would be held to account with regard to making sure that they didn't exceed current account spending in budget year 2013, so that was excess of budget year 2012. But we also indicated that you can't just flick the switch, and that we had a multi-year plan to get the accounts back into surplus. But it certainly wouldn't happen overnight. And we articulated that in the very voluminous document at the time.
Yes, so that was a year ago when you enunciated that. That was last
Yes, and we continued in this throne speech, as you'll see, to talk about a multi-year platform and the medium-term economic strategy. So we're continuing on as stated with a plan.
And my question again is that in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or
It's
5
in a multi-year plan, that it's certainly going to be in excess of 1 year.
Will it be in the near term?
It's more near medium term. We call it a medium-term economic strategy.
Are you talking about 3 years?
I think you'd say 2 to 3 years would be more appropriate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Haney, do you have any questions? Mr. Smith? Yeah, just one. Probably the changes in the health insurance, can you say how much they're going to cost?
The changes in the health insurance, you probably want to speak to the Minister of Health. But what he's doing at this stage is costing, and he's certainly assured Cabinet that there will be a negligible increase, and that the whole benefit of doing it is because he's going to be making sure that there's going to be very little added cost in terms of from the government purse. But I think that he would be certainly more appropriate, but certainly what he also has indicated that the government has to lead from the front. So as he talks about a national health strategy and plan that is affordable and accessible, it also means that he is looking at the acute care hospital and making sure that within the framework of the hospital, we also look at what we can do in terms of making sure we do a more efficient job. Yeah.
Madam Premier, earlier this year you suggested that Bermuda, for want of a better term, was out of the recession. In the throne speech it says, in the coming year, Bermuda will finally break the grip of this seemingly unending recession. Does this mean that there is going to be growth in the coming year? If so, how much? Because if you speak to business owners, they're telling you, and other people that deal with economies and such, even the often quoted gentleman from the Bermuda College, they seem to suggest that probably not before 2014, 2015 are we going to begin to see sunlight at the end of this extremely long time.
I think if I understand your question, you're asking what are the plans that the government has to grow the economy? Is that a fair comment?
Well, no, I'm asking, you're saying that there's going to be, well, if we're going to come out of this in 2013, what are you suggesting? What are you, well, I don't want to say predicting, but that is what is going to be. Is going to come in 2013? Are we going to see growth? Are we going to see a leveling off of what's happening? What are you suggesting we're going to see in 2013?
Well, what I'm suggesting is what I articulated a couple of weeks at the annual delegates conference when I laid out the 10-point plan for economic recovery. What I indicated clearly as front and center was to continue to develop and expand business and economic development opportunities. What do I mean by that? What does that mean in terms of tangible proposals? There's the hedge fund initiative, which is seeking to attract business to Bermuda and to grow business on that side. You've also heard in terms of the Minister of Business Development and Tourism about the proposals with regard to both increasing airlift as well as also diversification of markets. Diversification of markets means that you're not just fishing where you've always fished, you're looking elsewhere. Why are you looking elsewhere? Because you just feel like it? No. You're looking at it because you've looked at business plans and also see the opportunity for actual further expanded economic development and growth in Bermuda. And what does that mean? Why do we want economic growth? One, it increases GDP, but more importantly, what does it do? It provides opportunities for jobs for our people. That's why when you hear the Minister for Environment, Planning and Infrastructure Strategy talking about aquaculture, talking about the development of a fishing industry as an ancillary plank of economic development, it's not just because he's thinking of sustainability and environment. He's also looking at what do people need at this time. They need to have the opportunity and hope for more jobs. So that means that we have to do what we can to create that platform. And that's why you also heard from both the Minister for Business Development and Tourism as well as the Minister who speaks for national security about looking at land policy, about looking at also tourism properties as an opportunity for those who wish to stay here on a long-term basis in terms of tourism properties, either long leaseholds or freeholds, that they have an opportunity to get revenue and to generate revenue for Bermuda, because we want to increase the opportunity for economic activity. When you increase your economic activity, then you also increase the opportunity for people to have income generated as Bermudians. That may then remove the need for having some of these sort of relief provisions that you have through the Ministry of Youth, Families and Sports, whether through financial assistance or through other means. So our aim is to grow the economic pie, and we grow the economic pie by increasing the opportunities for economic activity. That means being business friendly. It also means fishing where the fish are. And you also look at, as you've heard from Minister of Government Estates, it's very important, as you heard in terms of the throne speech, that you look at how can you best leverage government assets for minimum add-on cost of government in order to generate economic activity. So you hear about the fact that the AG, with the indulgence and support of the Minister Scott, has been talking to the Salvation Army. They've identified a site. Salvation Army is looking at doing their due diligence so that they can build and then construct a homeless shelter. That's, again, give the government. What is the government giving up? Our skin in the game is that we're making available property for a minimum rent, probably even something as like a peppercorn, but you're also dealing with a social need. So that's the thing, that you're trying to leverage our excess capacity in terms of assets so that the people can benefit in a real fashion.
Okay, so do you expect growth in 2013?
I think we're working to have growth. That's it. What you want is, as the economies around the world start to improve, Bermuda has to be positioned and poised to benefit from that. You can't sit on your hands. You got to look, anticipate, act. And that's what we're doing across the board.
What level of growth are you?
Oh, I'm not in the business of predictions. What I am saying is that we're going to do what is necessary to grow the economy.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the grants of credit union.
Mm-hmm.
How much is it, and how will it start to be funded?
It's the national, I think you'll see the National Credit Union Guarantee. I can't recall the exact name in the U.S. What you find is that the credit union, we pass legislation and I suppose, piloted legislation as a credit union so that they can be under a regulatory framework that is both robust and credible. They now are not subject to political vagaries. They are under the remit of the independent regulator, and they are held accountable in that regard. They clearly, as you would be aware, are also subject to servicing those who have a need, people who are running into difficulty because they can't make whether it's their mortgage, their rent, or whatever. They, because of the economic downturn, they are obviously feeling it. And obviously what we're looking at is, when the budget year comes out, that making available a grant. The amount of the grant is not something which is going to be extremely high, but it will provide some coverage. And it will be probably run through something as we have with regard to how we operate with regard to the Bermuda Economic Development Council. Just as when we see institutions which sometimes are in a position of greater pressure given the economic downturns, we find ways to try and be helpful without being overly lavish. And that will certainly be something that will be in the budget for 2013.
With respect to the, it was a question for the economy minister, but the EEZ expansion program, surely that's going to take quite a bit of toll on the budget. How much are we going to have to hire more people to run these programs?
I'd be surprised if you would have the minister say that. What you have is a zone currently. What you now have is that you can bleed into other areas. She told you that 4 orders were tabled today. What that is providing an opportunity for people to both get into business, and they know that as they get into business, they'll be given certain concessions. And that helps, again, in a different way of stimulating and also providing the incentive for persons to get into business. Businesses that haven't started are not certainly contributing to the consolidated funds. But what you want, everybody recognizes that what often drives growth is also small businesses. So what you're doing is providing a facility and a framework so that you can increase that. And it's not just limited to the Northeast Hamilton, Middletown area. Remember, in the East End and the West End, you also have economic empowerment zones. So you're providing the capacity and leveraging government legislation without necessarily, at this time, giving up in terms of monies, or and the monies that you are foregoing by concessions, you expect that the benefit is that you're creating opportunities for jobs and economic activity. And what you do is increase economic activity that helps your GDP.
The question arises,
Minister, yeah, it's for the Minister of Health as well. That he'd indicated that the new hospital will come on stream 1st of April 2014. Is there any indication at this stage what the carrying cost of that project will be from 2014 when it comes on stream? And also, to what extent do you anticipate that medical tourism will cover those costs?
I think, Minister?
The carrying cost, Mr. Burchell?
30-year course.
Pardon? Yeah, the 30-year course. You will know, it's public knowledge that that is going to be in the vicinity of about 27 million per year. And
is that just the amortized cost or all the cost of building?
that's all the cost. It includes the ongoing maintenance of your major items like your chillers, your elevators, and things of that nature. But I will say, though, that it will be an ongoing estimation process by everyone involved. You'll know that it's public-private partnership, and we have a very good qualified team. What they will continue to look at is as we shift the facilities and services from the old hospital to the new, that number may move around a bit. So whether it may come down or up remains to be seen. But that was the estimate that was given a few years ago when we started. And you asked about medical tourism?
Yeah.
What was your question?
There was talk of medical tourism. It's mentioned in here, and it's always been floating around.
Mm.
Is the idea that medical tourism should more or less cover the cost, the additional cost of the PPP?
No, of course not. Of course not. I would like to hope so. I would love to hope so. I think everybody in Bermuda would love that. But no, it will not.
What proportion?
Well, we don't know. We're still in the very, very early stages, Larry. Very early stages.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes
Well,
today's.
a few
There'll be
more
opportunity
I have one more
for
question.
which-
I have
for
one
the
more question
previous
on this residency with the, I don't know if you're going to face this ball, Minister.
Next is will be addressed.
I just want to ask one quick question and then to hand it.
Just as a note, members of the media, the ministers will be having press briefings next week, so there will be an opportunity to ask further questions of the third speech.
Minister, this,
Minister?
sorry, thanks. Yeah. Residency in terms of people who invest in tourism zone units. What form of this residency become? What are the benefits that will come with this residency? I know that the benefit for the country will be investment, but what are the benefits that people who engage in this type of purchase, what benefits will they have in terms of this residency as it stands?
Well, first of all, they don't have it right now, so that's a great benefit. Anyone who wants to invest in one of those properties, freehold or leasehold, will be able to do it. Right now, only people who are globally retired can actually do it, but we are opening it up, as I said, Cayman Islands, Turks and Caicos, and I believe Bahamas has it also. This allows particularly those developers out there, and I'll name 9 Beaches, Cocoa Reef, and others who we are aware of, who are looking at expanding their property, particularly in the residential units, who individuals can purchase. They will not be able to work. They will not be able to work, but it allows them to come here and live. It expands our economy. They contribute to our economy going forward. And I think it's a great benefit going forward for the country. And particularly those hoteliers that want to move ahead can raise additional capital through this investment project.
Not an indirect way of addressing term limits, the term limit policy, in that perhaps people that work with the exempt,
Well, I can't.
Hold on, let me finish.
I'm
People
sorry.
that work with the exempt companies will be able to purchase those properties and reside here.
What was the question
Purchase
again?
those whether this will allow for people that work in the exempt companies who might
No,
be seeking.
no, because I said that people cannot work.
Minister, please.
Okay, sorry.
Being able to purchase these properties and reside on the island.
As I said, it's for people who are not working.
Thank you, members of the media. That concludes today's press.